Inshallah. Please read the following surah as soon as possible. In my first session, we'll talk about the background information for that. And then we'll move on to the topic I mentioned briefly earlier in the day. Suddenly, that person. Again, many thanks. The development of the Quran is beautiful if you stop to look at it over time. Therefore, the Bakar met to talk about the formation of a new family unit after the inevitable dissolution of the previous one. I mucked a hand with some folks who were talking about something crucial to the foundation of any community. When I discussed how to keep your faith strong, I said, when we say he took public life seriously, this is part of what we mean. You study McKinsey, and all the Islamic prophets you claim revealed ancient secrets to apes, humans, and ape-like creatures. You seem to pick up on the fact that he was thin. The monkey often makes references to Toshi, a designer. Those countries that used to exist, not every country that used to exist. A small minority of them even bother to call me Mr. or any other title. Why? The modernists taught us about Medina, and thanks to their consideration for the elderly, all of the information we learned about Haggai and more is now in plain sight. Islam, we find, established and placed a strong emphasis on individual rights from its inception to its final days. The prophets of what he was told to think were disregarded in favor of the first thing that came to Russell's mind after he lost a lot of money on the goods he was selling. There are always those who stand up for human rights. He was always on the side of doing what was right and protecting people from becoming the targets of other people's injustices. This is why prophets have always seemed to have a soft spot for him. Salim was active in a wide range of groups and meetings. If you thought he was committed to fighting injustice before he became a prophet, you'll find that he's even more dedicated to doing so now. The treatment of the orphans and other members of society opened his eyes, and he began to comprehend the world around him. That's why he defended them. And because of this, we realized that many Sudanese have lost their faith in Allah. Many people's rights are emphasized by him. This is a complete list that I've compiled. This is commonplace throughout the Sudan. That's why I thought I'd offer a suggestion, including chats about dowries. When I get to South Africa, I'll be able to go into more depth about why Sudanese people are confused. However, our community has many issues related to dowry. However, this is further evidence that dowry, marriage, divorce, and inheritance rights have been the subject of many debates. The leader of the Jamahiriya systems in the event of death, Islam brought a new approach to the distribution of inherited wealth. The roles of spouses are often the subject of conversation. There is a major problem with that right now. The rights of children, neighbors, employees, employers, orphans, and cousins are frequently debated. Family and legal protections. Right. There is a lot of back and forth about the responsibilities and liberties of those in positions of authority. If people are experiencing life as a minority, we should all be supportive of this discussion. Think of a world where Muslims make up the majority and hold the reins of power, but there is also a non-Muslim minority. Even the discussion of the Sudanese case, which involves less of a handout, is interesting. What should you do about that small percentage? The manslaughter laws are a frequent topic of conversation amongst us. The question is, what is it about that? Manslaughter and the possible loss of a hand if excessive force was used against another person. There's no doubt that the absence of a feminist rhino will be felt there as well. Considering its Sudanese origins, again, many established social norms predate the spread of Islam. Burhanu, aided by Talaat, abolished these practices one by one, replacing them with new Islamic institutions. When you say the entire Sudan, there's one thing I just don't get. Some may question why the loss of a hand at Allah's hands would lead to the establishment of such and such regulations. Oh, there is a high probability that the island will steal a hand from someone who questions the artist. As a result, it's understandable that the thought of losing a hand or an eye might occur to someone reading certain verses from the same Sudan. The Sudanese language has lost a hand thanks to these verses. I like how the book starts in the middle of the 5th year, instead of the traditional beginning of the 4th, thus challenging the reader to consider whether or not a loss of honor can occur in time between the 4th and 6th quarters. There are 3 claims he makes. Justice requires something of us, a limb severed. The first 3 are concerned with what the other person wants from you. We, individually, come first. The law was read by Burhanu. We have this deen not because Allah gave it to us, but because someone else did. But he also tells us that Allah desires to simplify our lives by giving us deen. I know that life can be tough, but I still want to be honest with you. This is why the law exists. Our deen is very clear and there is little room for interpretation. In our deen, there is no room for interpretation. In our deen, there is no room for ambiguity about one's feelings for another person or their own identity. Hard study in this context yields astonishing clarity and simplicity. Please tell us how many payments we have received. You've seen Shaheed do it countless times. That, they say, is what led them to Islam. Why? Because of Deen's clarity, the Quran can't be misunderstood. That's Allah's Barfi, the Leroy Barfi, if you look into it. The Holy Bible. In our Deen, there are no ambiguities. The order's intended outcome had unintended consequences, leading to the current state of affairs. They read the statute, in the footsteps of whom? The absence of a law is intentional, as it seeks to clarify and simplify matters for you. Then he elaborates while your ideas come, and I want to guide you a lot behind what Allah is not. I am not the type to give you a responsibility, and I am not going to set you up for failure. The Deen and Allah's efforts to set us up for success are not accidental. There are a lot of people telling us that I'm handing you a Deen to ensure our success. However, I have made it a lot easier to understand. I hope we're on the same page now. In addition, I'll explain a long-standing tradition. They are on their way, and you can find me at americablog.com. I have something very dated to offer you. I'll show you how to mislead us several different ways, explain your motivations, and offer some solutions. Let me show you how the primary does it. When I exhort you to remain steadfast to your Deen, I will share the NBA's experiences so that you can all benefit. Finally, he says, we had to buy an income and a loss of a hand over to Allah when He knows that we will slip up and make mistakes. Honestly, you know what? Allah is not the dictatorial type. You should be severely punished for your mistake. Burhanu Atad, on the other hand, claims we are to welcome whenever you slip up. I'll be there to say I'm sorry and offer forgiveness. I'm willing to give it a third try. First, though, you get a do-over. No way, no how. Finally, a break in the odds. He failed at WhatsApp despite having several opportunities. He goes on, well, you know who to be angry at, but despite that, I really like him. In the next verse, he expresses his desire for forgiveness. As he puts it, a love of forgiveness is one of the greatest things that we can have in this DNA, and especially in the Akira, he adds. Mercy is why I love pardons so much. Consider the possibility that, upon our appearance at the Day of Judgment, we find ourselves missing a hand in addition to everything else that says, you know what? You've made quite a few mistakes. You did something illegal. However, I have finally forgiven myself. I cut you loose. Consider how nervous you would be about going to court. Please explain. The decision. What? The things they'll say. But what if you stand before the judge and he says, you know what? The entire case was dismissed. As anyone with access to social media can attest, there are indeed such judges in existence, and people do indeed appear before them with speeding tickets after speeding tickets, after speeding tickets, after speeding tickets. Doing so is illegal. No. What? And I have compassion for you, he says. I deny any wrongdoing. These defendants are openly weeping in front of the judge. Think about what was said above. The island's history was lost, unfortunately. Believe me when I say that everyone whose charges were dropped was completely confused by what I was explaining to them about the law. A man's backside. In that case, what options do we have? Still, I enjoyed your writing very much. You've got your own country to call home. However, there are those in this world who care only about themselves and thus do as they please at all times. They've taken some of their charisma, the charisma of their water, and run off with it. It has also been watered down. They've altered the plan. And why, if it gives them what they want while still being honest, it's been disqualifies things for everyone. There have been many expressions of compassion and a desire to forgive us. You would benefit even if I told you to do something that went against everything you knew to be right and rational. Why? Since it comes from me and I lost a hand serving Allah, let's be open to whatever comes our way as we memorize Quran and cultivate our faith. Please clarify whether we are bringing Shahada and accepting the loss of a hand to Allah when we say Alavi, or whether we are imagining the loss of a hand to something that Allah has invented. No matter how much time passes, I will never, ever lose faith in Allah's revelation that He will restore Venus's hand. Whom does Allah belong? I implore the Imam of the loss of Okinawa's heart to count us among those who have envisioned Allah's lesser of two hands. To Allah be the heir to the recovery of Ohana with the Allah, and to count us among those who, in the beatings of Okinawa's loss to Allah, pay the highest price, and to obey Okinawa's loss to Allah with all our hearts, always and without fail. Constantly is what I mean. Where does that fit in? In other words, hello and salam. Doing so is illegal. But have you ever wished there was something like Netflix or YouTube that you could watch to relax as a Muslim? We're proud to say that our ad and virus-free Islam TV app is the first of its kind. The videos range from Islamic teachings to stories about the prophets to discussions of current events.